Hey, what's up, guys? It's your girl Kia. Let's talk, let's talk, let's talk. So, as everybody knows, Wendy Osefo of the Real Housewives of Potomac has now been arrested and charged, I want to say, with 14 counts of insurance fraud, basically fraud. And we're gonna get into the end, but a lot of people are just like, oh my God, how could she do this? Wendy's educated, her husband's educated, they have a job. Why would they do this? And my whole thing is, are we really surprised? We have watched year over year over year of housewives who are living above their means or trying to keep up with the Joneses for the show and get into either serious financial debt or go straight up to jail. And it didn't start with Wendy Osefo. It didn't start with Jen Shah. It didn't even start with Teresa Judice. There is a person before this that everybody seems to forget because she's one of those kind of forgotten housewives where she was actually evicted on the show, and that is Lynn Curtin. Lynn Curtin was on the Real Housewives of Orange County. I want to say she was like either on season 3 or 4. On that actual show, it was revealed like they were evicted on the show. Like cameras happened to be there getting ready to film, and the landlord shows up to evict them out of the home. The daughters are completely in disarray. They don't know what to do. They call their mom. She's just like, "Oh no, it's a mistake. It's a mistake." And then come to find out from the husband that they've been living beyond their means, and he's been trying to keep up with the rent payments and wasn't able to keep up with it. And they eventually got divorced, and now both of those girls, the daughters of Lynn Curtin, do adult films now. So it's really a sad situation where people see the glitz and the glam of being on the show and the possibilities of being on the show, that they're not living in the reality when the cameras go down. Lynn was trying to promote her cuff business, like those cuff bracelets that she was trying to promote on the show, thinking the exposure on the show would launch these cuff bracelets into the stratosphere and they would have all this money in the world. When in reality, the cuffs were ugly, nobody cared. She wasn't on the show to make a real impact or dent, so it really didn't matter. So let's move forward into Teresa Giudice. Everybody knows the Teresa Giudice situation. In 2013, Teresa and her husband Joe were indicted on 41 counts of fraud, including banking, mail, and bankruptcy fraud. And what actually happened in this situation is that the creditors and different people they had gotten loans from had seen their flashy lifestyle and seen like all the assets they said they didn't have, they actually had. And people realized that they were also submitting fake loan applications. So that big flashy lifestyle they were living, they weren't actually living. Joe ended up being deported and also did time in jail. And then Teresa also did time in jail, again, for wire fraud. Then we get to Jen Shah, who it was never revealed what Jen Shah did for a living. Her husband was a basketball coach, called him Coach Shaw, but it was never revealed what she did for work, ever. But they lived in this giant house in Salt Lake City. And though Salt Lake City isn't like living in LA or Manhattan, it's still very expensive to live in Salt Lake City. And the home was gigantic. Well, come to find out, and Jen Shaw was actually intended to be arrested on the show. So that made a really big splash because that was a storyline in 2021. And she maintained her innocence, but she pled guilty in 2022 to conspiracy to commit wire fraud. The scheme defrauded thousands of people, many of whom were elderly. And she was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison in order to pay restitution. She is still in jail. I think she still has like a year left to go on like her required amount of time. But again, she's trying to keep up with this lifestyle and was doing something illegal to have all this money she didn't have and appear on the show that she was rich and successful and glamorous and Gucci down. But in reality, she didn't have all this money. She had to excuse me. She had to defraud elderly people to get the money, you know? Then we have Erica Jane. And everybody knows the Erica Jane story because this one, I think, made the most national impact because her husband, Tom Girardi, is a famous attorney. He was a part of the team with the Aaron Brockovich case. I forgot what the actual case his name is, but he's a very famous attorney. He was helping victims of a plane crash, sue the airline to get their money. Well, he got the money and embezzled it from his law firm and never gave it to the clients. And this was from, victims and orphans, and was using the money that he was embezzling to keep up with their lifestyle at home and also to fund Erica Jane's music career, which when you think about it, made sense. Erica Jane's not talented. So who is putting up all this money for the costumes, the background dancers, and all these things? Like she has zero talent at singing. She's just a very attractive woman who can do a split. That's not talent. I mean, there's strippers who can do that. Like, who cares? So he was funding her music career and funding their lifestyle. Because here's the other thing about Erica Jane. She got a Vegas show to do like a quote unquote residency at some little rinky dink, franchise bar down there. House of Blues, I think is where she was doing it at. It lasted maybe 6 months, and we have not heard about that residency ever again. She did Roxy Hart. That was it. We've never heard about the music again. I mean, her last season on the show was really just about her rebuilding her life and decorating her rental property, and not a property that she was renting out to someone else, the rental property that she actually lives in. So, anyway, he ended up, Erica actually had all these jewels and glitz and glam on the show, and people were trying to get her to understand you showing all these glitz and glams on the show was a huge issue. You are rubbing it in the face of people who he actually embezzled from, and she never got it. And again, she's in that mindset of right now I'm on the show. I have to look like I'm rich, wealthy, and successful. This that ring I want back that was mine, that was bought with stolen funds. I want it back. It's mine. It was a gift, even though no matter if it's a gift from wherever, if it's made with stolen funds from a law firm, it's not your gift. And it's another sad situation because I think he went to jail or maybe he got compassion. I think I'm trying to figure out if he got compassionate release or not because he's very, very old and he has dementia, according to them. A little unknown ones we can go through, Jacqueline Larita, 2025, she's facing lawsuits accusing them of draining funds from Chris's bankrupt clothing company to finance their extravagant lifestyle. In 2025, a court ordered them to pay over $760,000 to a law firm that represented them in the bankruptcy case. Now, Jacqueline's not on the show now, but Chris had that clothing brand while they were on the show. And now that that is defunct, it's coming to light all the fraud that took place to make sure they had as a rich and nice lifestyle on the show from what they were doing with that clothing brand. And then everybody knows of Kim Zolciak and the huge fall from grace with her. And I'm not even talking about the divorce and the money. She has been so poor that she's actually relied on her daughters to pay certain bills. She's starting to get back into the limelight now, so on and so forth. But these little paychecks from going on shows like trying to reverse your plastic surgery, those little checks of maybe $10,000, $11,000 are not going to clear up the millions of dollars of debt, the amount of money they lost in that home that she has right now. Like I don't even know where she's living. Her and Corey are now getting a divorce. They've lost their home. They have multiple children. She never got a job either, never really had a career. She had that skincare line Cashmere that she swore was making millions of dollars. That is defunct now. I mean, I heard someone say, why don't these women ever do businesses that succeed, that have longevity, that have some backing behind them? Why do they always try to do these? I want to launch a skincare brand. I want to open a restaurant. I want to open a bar. I want to do all these glitz and I want to start a makeup line, all these glitz and glammy things that really don't have longevity when people are really struggling. Everybody says Robin from Real Housewives of Potomac is boring, but she invested in a very sturdy franchise, Glow 30. And if you watch my channel, I'm very familiar with franchises because that's my main bread and butter is doing lead generation for franchises. Glow 30 is a stable brand, has multiple locations across all 50 states. There's something that has a huge backing behind it where someone who wanted to get into it would be able to say, yeah, I can invest in this. And then I have a whole corporation that's going to be behind me and help me with advertising. So now let's get into Wendy Osefo. And the reason why I'm going into all of this is to kind of show that there have been multiple women who have been living above their means to be successful on this Bravo show. That's just what they do. And it leads down a really, really kind of dark path that they kind of can't come out of. So let's read the charges that are up against Wendy. I know most people know them, but I'm just going to go through them and people are going to discover how she got caught, what the story behind it is. So Wendy Osefo faces a total of 16 charges, including 7 for felony, false, misleading info, fraud in excess of $300. Hold on. This is making me, okay. 8 for misdemeanors or false, misled info, fraud in excess of $300, and a misdemeanor charge of a false statement to a police officer per Carroll County Sheriff's Office Public Information. So what happened was they said they got robbed. And when they got robbed, the investigators go in. They find out that their bedroom has been ransacked, but not the rest of the house. Eddie and Wendy claimed that all of this jewelry and all these things were taken from the home. Okay. Well, somebody noticed that on Watch What Happens Live and other shows, or the interview she's done, one of the rings she claimed was stolen was actually on her finger. So that's how kind of all this kind of got started. So Eddie, meanwhile, faces a total of 18 charges, including 9 for felony misleading into false info. Kind of the same thing as Wendy. And like I said, the charges stem from a burglary the couple reported in April 2024 when they were in Jamaica. However, per docs obtained by US Weekly, Friday's authorities have cast doubt on the availability of that theft. And again, that is because Wendy was wearing certain jewelry pieces on Watch What Happens Live, and also wearing certain jewelry pieces on interviews. That made investigators dig deeper, and they investigate explained in the following that to go in or out of a particular window at the Yosefo's home, one has to step on the toilet, but sheriff's personnel found that the toilet lid was down with no debris on it. They also pointed out that the couple had an ADT home security system and a ring camera. The Yosefos activated the ADT alarm system upon leaving for vacation, the court docs state. During the time they were away, there was no motion detected inside the residence. There was no activity such as package deliveries on the ring camera that was monitored remotely by the Osefos. So let me explain to you guys, and I know you guys probably know this, but everybody has ADT, everybody has Ring. So they may not be able to catch everything on your front door, but they can catch it from the neighbors across the street, the neighbor next door, the neighbor behind you, because they've got a back porch camera. Everybody has Ring cameras. So it's basically having neighborhoods full of 24-hour surveillance. And there is no surveillance on anybody's cameras of anybody breaking into the Yosefo's home. And ADT automatically saves all the footage. So you could delete it. I don't know if you can. You might be able to delete it from your phone, but in the ADT cloud, that data is always there. And there is no sign that anybody is trying to creep up to their home, creep into a neighbor's backyard. None of that stuff. It shows nothing. So that's already a red flag. Investigators also claim Eddie gave statements to two insurance companies about the stolen items. Why are you giving this information to two insurance companies? I mean, fraud is bad, but if you're gonna fraud, can you be smarter at it, especially if you're a lawyer? Eddie was asked if he had other insurance, but failed to disclose the home site, one of the insurance company and jewelers, that he was also making a claim with Travelers Insurance, adding that Eddie and Wendy both signed statements claiming $450,000 in property loss. And then they just kind of show pictures of them on vacation. And again, this is another one of those situations of keeping up with the Joneses, making $450,000, because another thing that Wendy and Eddie did is that they went to a jewelry store and bought several items and got a receipt from, of course, and then took them back to the stores a couple days later. So when they filed for their insurance fraud, they filed those items because they had the receipt for it, filed those items and said, well, these items were stolen. Here's a receipt for them. So of course the insurance company was like, okay, here's the proof that they bought them. They were stolen. Okay, fine. But in reality, they had taken that stuff back to the store already and gotten their money back. And the store I think the store corroborated that. So it's just really sad with the keeping up with the Joneses. To stay on this show, Wendy, you are a professor at Johns Hopkins University. Your husband's a lawyer. And you decided that it was better to be on the show and be successful at the show, so much so that you got a nose job and a BBL your second season on. Then you started dressing in this very provocative way and very name brand way that it seemed off brand for a professor, which I'm pretty sure her second school, the Wesleyan College, whatever, that did anybody else know that the course that she was teaching at Wesleyan College was sociology in the time of reality TV? That's the class that she created at Wesleyan College, and then she retired. So she was at Johns Hopkins at the beginning of her tenure on Real Housewives, and then switched over to Wesleyan for the stupid course, and then she retired. So that's a whole different subject. But it's again, it's disappointing to see Wendy go through this. The other thing I don't understand is why Eddie thought this would be a good idea to do. Eddie's in the cannabis business, and if everybody knows this, when you're in the cannabis business, you cannot be a cannabis dealer or I forgot what it's called, but you can't own a cannabis store if you have a felony. You can't do that. So him committing a felony, a fraud felony, hurts his chances to keep his cannabis license, or however that is set up. Also, nobody's going to want to do business with him if they find out that that he's been committed a fraud, that he had zero problem lying to an insurance company. And everybody says, oh, it's the insurance, you're not hurting anybody. And you're not hurting anybody, just hurting the company. But it's just really, really tacky, and it makes you a liar. And it makes you a dubious person. That you would rather look like you have all this money rather than just being honest. you guys have been living in the home you're living in for a really, really long time. Before the show came along, apparently they've been in the same house forever. So it seems to me you only started living above your means when you had to show it off for other people. When the show came on and you wanted to show that you could be glitz, glammy, and sexy and fun and go places and travel, and you wore Gucci and you wore Prada, you wore Bottega, you're doing all these things, you did it for the show. Because previous Wendy, who was working her regular job, husband's a lawyer, you guys could afford that house and afford your lifestyle. But you can't afford it trying to be the it thing on Real Housewives. So it's just really sad. I'm interested to see how this plays out. I'm pretty sure that Wendy is going and her husband are going to get convicted of this. I will bet my bottom dollar they are going to get convicted of this. It's just going to be determining how much time they end up doing. If they end up doing, 6 or 7 months, if they just end up, being able to chalk it up to restitution, because it's not like a long-term fraud like Teresa's or Jen Shaw's. This was a kind of one-time thing that they did. They did, I mean, I don't know. That's what I'm thinking. So they could end up doing 6 months or a year. They could just end up being restitution. Either way, they're both of their reputations are completely ruined and trashed. And I feel bad for their families. I feel bad for their kids. And good luck, Wendy and Eddie. It's just not a good look. But drop down in my comments. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on the other housewives and just keeping up with the housewives style of looking wealthy when you really aren't. But all right, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.